Let's do
Okay,
it.
let's do it. So I am really thrilled to kick off the WIC Inspire 2025 with the keynote, which is with Sonal Mane. And she is really focusing on the future of B2B go to market from funnels to flywheels in the AI economy. And the reason why is the traditional funnel model is extremely outdated. And now the companies are really thinking about how to use the AI, the buyer intent signals, and community partnerships to create self sustaining go to market flywheels that drive continuous growth. So, to guide us through this powerful shift, I would love to invite Sonal. She is a global strategist and enterprise transformation leader at Databricks. And Sonal brings decades of experience bringing the innovation at the intersection of technology, partnership, and revenue execution. So, Sonal, very excited to have you on the stage. So, I have a very interesting question to kick off. So,
Yeah.
if you were building a go to market strategy where you're creating something with your hands, it may be painting a canvas, building a Lego, or cooking a new recipe, which one would you pick and why?
That's a wonderful question, Chaitra. First off, thank you, everyone. And thank you to the Women in Cloud group. And thanks, Chaitra, for having me. If I had to pick between the three, I have to say I'm so biased as a builder, it would have to be the Lego.
I'm with you on that. So
It's
with that,
infinite possibilities, right?
exactly. So well, with that, I'm going to hand over the baton and take it away.
Thank you, Chaitra. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Just as Chaitra mentioned, I'm Sonal Mane and I lead global transformations at Databricks. Today, we'll talk about a proven framework for building go to market engines. So, yes, this is a keynote, but my hope is I leave you with something tangible and something you can take back and work on after we wrap. The whole idea of this go to market engine is that it's purpose built for the AI era, right? One that unifies across different channels, such as product led, partner led, and AI powered strategies, all with an eye towards driving revenue and scalable growth. But before we jump in onto the next slide, a little bit about why I'm here. Why am I the person to tell you a little bit more about this whole concept of funnels and flywheels? And if we could move to the next slide, or I'm not sure if I'm the one to move them. Thank you. About a decade ago at Microsoft, we were faced with a challenge when it came to hundreds and hundreds of startups that were working on the Microsoft platform. As an example, we were activating about 800 companies on the Azure platform in a given year. And at the time, nobody was talking about AI. So we went in and looked at the problem as a team, as the Microsoft for Startups team, and came up with this notion of what if we could predict with a certainty the level of success a startup could have over time. So this was pre-CB insights, pre-pitch book, having all the fancy AI and insights. And we built out a patented solution, which then was later white labeled and sold to other industry focused customers at Microsoft. And AI at the time and building these predictive models was so new. It was an amazing experience to be hands-on with things like that. And then I think we've just never looked back as an industry, but as this whole era and evolution comes through, that's been my journey and the time that I've spent at Microsoft and then at Qualtrics helping out with the product led side of things and digitizing a lot of the customer engagement. And now at Databricks, really taking product led growth and expanding that into the community, into the partner ecosystem, and creating this sort of fluid experience for our customers and partners is why I feel like it's a compelling need of the hour to share everything I've learned here, but at the same time, always available for any questions and follow-ups after that. So if we move over to the next one, let's look at really quickly, as Chaitra mentioned earlier, what is a flywheel? And as we think about this kind of notion of the blended go-to-market concept, where you have a self-fulfilling engagement model, really the whole idea of a flywheel moving away from the funnel is to orchestrate multiple go-to-market strategies with a cohesive operating model. So we'll talk about what that means in a second. But if you're, again, interacting over chat, feel free to talk about some of the go-to-market strategies that you are using at your company today. It could be product, it could be channel, it could be thinking about the sales-led motions or multiple, and we can start getting some inputs on that. But if you think about this whole notion of when you're bringing these different channels together, there is a huge unlock to be had. So if we move on to the next slide here, you can see that there is a trajectory in terms of how a typical go-to-market team evolves. So when you're kicking off an organization, you're mostly thinking about what are the brass tacks? How do I go to market? How do I mitigate risk for my product if I'm a small startup? Over time, then you start thinking about things like customer and user journeys. And finally, once you have that product market fit and you're starting to scale, you look at that exponential growth engine. So that's the typical trajectory. And as you think about the AI native leaders today, be it a B2B enterprise company like Databricks or a company like HubSpot, Notion, Atlassian, or even the early stage startups in today's scenario, everyone's really taking advantage of the fact that buyers no longer have a linear journey, right? And so that if you think about it, the funnel model, which was too rigid and started with awareness and then acquisition and conversions into engagement, is almost dead at this point because it's inadequate as B2B and B2C buyers flow seamlessly through the different experiences. In some cases, for instance, how organizations acquire tooling could be through a partner, they could be on a website, they could be looking at reviews. So there's a hybrid set of playbooks that are coming to life, which combine this whole human expertise with AI capabilities. And what AI native leaders have found out is the way to win is really with this blended go-to-market flywheel. So let's unravel that in a few different areas and think about how that comes to life. So when you look at this blended experience, what you're technically doing behind the hood is analyzing behavioral patterns, looking at engagement signals, contextual data, and really thinking about what your user needs before the competitors or before the user even understands. It's almost anticipating what the experience might look like based on user intent and based on user business outcomes or customer business outcomes, right? So it creates a much more stronger, faster competitive advantage. Buyers, again, today, especially the modern buyer, is very empowered, right? They want to have this self-service, guided experience. They are the ones who want to go initiate, talk to partners. So there's all of this idea that comes together, which is about creating a frictionless ecosystem for that end consumer where you can actually engage them through different preferred channels the way they want to be engaged. So it's no longer let's send them an acquisition campaign or let's put cookies on the websites, right? It's all about how do you drive that user optimization from the moment the user even imagines that they have a certain need. And there's a ton of listening and intent signals that can be leveraged for that. The third and the fourth piece here is really about personalization and experimentation, right? So as you think about going into all of these different channels, you can really bring in the whole idea of these exponential levers of the different channels coming together. So what you see here right now are just a few real life examples, right? So you can see here, as an example, Stripe started with a very developer-led approach, but very soon over time, they started fueling the ecosystem by connecting into channel partners, rightly so, as Stripe started expanding into different ecosystems. Same thing for Atlassian, very much a PLG company at its heart. Over time, they've taken a model that's very much community and influencer led. And then last but not the least, you can look at Zoom, a hugely valued company today. Again, started with the fundamental user experience led model, but is now expanding into channel led growth. And so all of these experiences here to kind of show you this intertwined visual, the idea behind it is that the go-to-market strategy and the playbook and the flywheel isn't just something that spins, right? It's more about this notion of you start at one center of gravity when it comes to the go-to-market strategy, and very soon you evolve into this autonomous self-learning integrated loop. So it's really a much more data-driven and continuous learning process. So to move us into a few quick examples of what that looks like in real life, Salesforce, as an example here, you can see launched into the AWS marketplace, very much a B2B enterprise sales-led company, moving and taking advantage of their partner-like ecosystem in the past 5 years, moving into their community-led ecosystem channel, and then their product-led channel very recently, as of last year, when they released this army of agents. And suddenly, over the past 12 months, everyone's now building an agent, right? So there's an agent for that. And so with Salesforce, you can see they've actually automated 30% of their deal registrations when it comes to their partners, all in all driving about 2x growth for themselves. The next example here is Notion, right? Notion is a very PLG heavy company when you look at it on the face of the experience. You're coming in, you're building your first notebook, you're building that first task list, but really they've gone from being a product led, seamless experience to now taking advantage of the fact that they could bring in more partners and really start augmenting that with a sales led, enterprise focused motion. So again, going from 1 million to 30 million users in 4 years isn't something that you can achieve with just a single go-to-market channel. You really need to start amplifying and building out that flywheel to bring that kind of growth to life. Last but not the least, we have HubSpot, a complete darling company when it comes to the marketers out there. They have the best templates, they have the best content. If you're a marketer who wants to learn and grow on the platform, this is probably the best academy or course that you could take. HubSpot's way more than a thought leader, right, when it comes to marketing. And what they've done is over the couple of years, they've actually experienced tremendous growth. And that hasn't, again, just been through their content strategy, but they've also taken a much stronger partner led motion where they've automated partner onboarding and enablement. They've gone out and looked at how they could actually build out more of these product led flows, everything from their freemium CRM to their AI driven onboarding. They have an agent, of course, and then they have personalized recommendations. So all of these examples bring to light the fact that, and if we move to the next slide here, that we're in this new era, which is the rise of the flywheel, right? As Chaitra said, the funnels are moving into flywheels. And really what that means in the real world is a vision that's really ambitious, but pretty simple. And so let's talk about that. If you think about the flywheel on the right, really what it's attempting to do here is unifying AI with all of the different channels that are available to you as an organization. You may be a startup and you might just be focusing on PLG as a starting point, and that's fine. Or you might be an enterprise that's very sales led, and that's fine too. Regardless of your starting point, the vision is to create a self optimizing growth loop and anchor on these three pillars here. So, how do you unify your customer intelligence, which means bringing in the data, bringing in all of the insights into one single home, if you may? The second piece here is about organizational enablement, another huge challenge when it comes to creating that culture of growth and omni-channel and flywheel based thinking. And so the whole idea of creating cross motion attribution where sales isn't competing with CS, isn't competing with product, is creating that harmony in terms of how you actually bring these metrics and outcomes together at a board level or at a company level when it comes to your go-to-market strategy. And last but not the least, experimenting along the way. Hundreds and hundreds of self-serve scalable experiments that can actually help you figure out, is it product and marketing and the combination of channels that you want to activate? Is it partner-led that you want to go after, even though you might be a seed or a Series A company? So to leave you with a few kind of next steps here is this simple approach, if we move to the next slide, on building out your own AI-powered go-to-market engine. So it's amazing to hear all of the impact that Salesforce made, HubSpot made, and Databricks is making today in the industry. How do you get started as an organization, regardless of your size and scale? It's a very simple 3-step model. Start off, audit, and look at what data sets exist and start auditing your existing motions to identify where you have those successful channels versus where do you actually need to unify intent and signal data. The second piece is around piloting and starting small. So if you're a PLG company, that's awesome. Layer in a marketing-led approach. If you're someone who's partner-led, maybe bring in a little bit of that sales-led approach and create a product feedback loop. So really starting small and piloting AI-driven plays where you can create some very simple solutions like account intelligence, predictive lead scoring, or even AI agents for that matter is a great way to start. And then the third piece is really creating this closed loop learning where let the AI engine or the data engine in the back end analyze and start creating results and playbooks for you, right? This is where the AI magic kicks in. When you have all of your data and your channels integrated, you can start measuring cross-motion impact. So with that in mind, there is a quick peek into what some of these metrics might look like on the next slide. I won't go too much into that in the interest of time. For me personally, it's really the CAC payback. So when you think about the cost of acquiring customers, really measuring how quickly can you recuperate that cost, be it in the product org, be it in the marketing org, or be it in the sales or the go-to-market side of the house, really that CAC payback is one of those kind of key anchor metrics where you can come back and say, here's how much I invested, here's what I'm getting back, and here's the lifetime value of my customer. So yes, there's a lot of other metrics that you could be looking at, the foundational ones, as well as things like your NRR and your churn and all of those other metrics. But really, as you think about the ROI, it's that payback number that you're looking at. So what's next? Get started. If we move to our next slide here, the road isn't as smooth as one can imagine, especially as AI is evolving in and of itself today. It does feel a little bit bumpy, like walking on sands at a seashore, hence the visual. But go ahead, audit your go-to-market funnel, start unlocking AI growth, and start thinking about how do you turn those conflicts that are happening in the organization into competitive advantages? How do you bring in resolutions with your in partnership with your sales teams? How do you convert them from detractors to supporters? And then finally, how do you actually progress with purpose? So start small, audit, and pilot relentlessly, and then you can build out your own flywheel. That's all the content I have for now. And again, thank you so much, Chaitra, for the time and for having me here with everyone.
Wow, Sonal, that one was fantastic content. What do you all think? Put it in the chat. Boom, if you loved this particular session. But for me, the takeaway was just fabulous. It's so simple. Audit yourself to build the foundation and pilot and then optimize it, right? It's a brilliant flywheel. And I can see the love for Legos, Sonal. Your slides definitely showed everything. But as you are thinking about building the AI flywheel for your company, what are the things that you are like exploring every single day with your team? Is it more investing your time on the CAC or something else?
Yes, that's a great question, Chadra. There's a combination there, right? So I think as we were looking at that second piece here on conflict and competitive advantages, there's probably many people in this room that'll agree to the attribution motion there, where the sales versus the marketing qualified leads versus the product qualified leads always end up with some friction points. And so I think my first sort of foray into Databricks and driving that culture change was really creating that consensus across all the leaders, right? So it's a top-down. AI in today's world is a very CEO-focused motion. And so driving that engagement and energy across the leaders, but also at the grassroots, I think that's where I spend a ton of my time. And then believe it or not, it is in that Lego building, right? Taking brick by brick, every single data set, every single team that matters, and bringing all of those data sets together, it takes a village. And it's only that data, and in our world, it's a lake house that comes together where you can actually bring in that data integrated sort of system to then power what the customer or the partner sees. So to really bring that together, then you're meeting with the engineering and the R&D folks and really building things like telemetry and intent tracking. So that's a second aspect. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy where you're deep in the dungeons, bringing all of those insights in, and then of course you're surfacing, connecting the dots with the rest of the organizations.
Fantastic, Sonal. Thank you so much for sharing the insight. I know some of you may feel that it's very high level. Some may feel like, oh, I got this one. Stay there. By the end of the day, you will take something with you and you'll say, wow, it moved the needle for my business. So again, thanks, Sonal, for being here. I will move on. For all the folks who are listening, I want to know what insights resonated with you and were there any big takeaways that you are taking away. Put it in the chat or share with your people in your network, because it's not about just building the show. You also have to do everything pretty much every day because the speed of AI is here and we want to ensure you are set up for success as you go forward.